Hey guys, thanks for joining me for this 98th episode in Season 2 of Good Questions with Cameron Dole. Special guest on this episode is Matt Stillwell, country singer, songwriter. We're going to talk about the new release of his single, Hey Dad 2021. Of course, if you would, please take the time to subscribe, comment, leave some feedback, check out the shop, and share with your friends. Now, where's the line between having too much stuff and full-on hoarding? Now, it sounds like a lot of us are blurring that line right now. Now, 2/3 of Americans say that they have so much stuff they can't easily fit it all in their home. And stress shopping on Amazon last year, well, that didn't help. Now, 7 in 10 people say they reorganized at least 2 rooms in their home during the pandemic, partly because they needed space and because they were stuck at home with nothing to do. Now, it's also because we had to use those rooms differently, like you needed a home office, a place to Zoom, or a spot for your kids to do their school online. Now, the top rooms we reorganized last year were our bedroom, living room, bathroom, kitchen, and home office. 13% of us also reorganized a child's bedroom. 10% cleaned up the garage, and 9% reorganized their closet. Well, we'll be back with our new friend, Matt Stillwell, talking about that new single, Hey Dad 2021, plus a performance right after this. Got a single that, like we mentioned before we came on today, been playing, I guess, about 6 years, I think. Hey Dad came out 2015-2016 timeframe. Matt Stillwell, and if you listen to KWHW, you know that song. And first off, Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us today.
Well, thank you for having me, man, and thanks for playing the song. That's awesome.
Now, how surprising was it, the response that you got from the single Hey Dad the first time around, and is that kind of what molded the 2021 version, if you will?
It is. I don't think I realized how powerful music can be when it hits you at a certain moment in your life. And hearing people's stories, whether that was them telling me face to face or if that was online or whatever that was about the song or the video, really kind of made me step back and realize that, okay, we have a little bit of a platform. And the part that I love the most is that it has given other people a platform to talk about their dad. And that part to me, I think is needed. And that's the part that really kind of I didn't realize would be part of this, to be honest with you. And yes, it did mold kind of the story that has transpired over the last 5-6 years, to be able to, ultimately, hopefully give Hey Dad 2021 a little bit bigger of a platform.
Now, when the original was pinned out, what was your thought sitting down? I know you mentioned it being therapeutic. I mean, was it ever even an idea of being something going into that project that would even leave that room even?
So like I said, it was less than a month after Dad passed. Most of the time when I go write songs, I have an idea. I know what I'm going to write about. I know all of these things. I had thank goodness my mom and my wife pushed me to go down to Jupiter, Florida and play baseball again. I played baseball forever. And I was at the St. Louis Cardinals fantasy camp. Man, I was playing second base with Ozzie Smith playing shortstop. And this was right after my dad. So it was like the best therapy ever. And, it's about a 9-10 hour drive both ways. I drove from there to Nashville because I had a songwriting appointment with Lynn. And he had been on a songwriter retreat. When my dad passed, he'd been on a songwriter retreat in the Dominican Republic. So he wasn't able to come to the services. And, so this was the first time I saw him. We were close. He was close to my dad. But I went in, I was going to write a song about beer. I had no intentions of doing anything. And so it was completely out of left field for me. Because I started telling him what I wanted to write about. I had a deal with Budweiser and this whole thing. And, he did. This is honest. He looked at me. He's like, "That ain't what we're doing today, buddy." And so that part, when he said that, it got me, right? It put me in a different space right then. And I pulled my phone out, cause the song's ultimately about a conversation that I would have if I could. And I pulled that out and I saw Mom and Dad, writing your favorites 1 and 2. And, the songwriting that day, I remember crying a lot, to be honest with you. But I also remember saying, man, this is going to help, because it was helping me right then. I think more so than any other song, I had a song called Shine about moonshine. I mean, that's pretty simple. Mm-hmm. This in a much different way has kind of that same simplicity that it just gets straight to the point, and more importantly, straight to the emotion. And so I think that day I knew in the room that it had the potential to help. I didn't have time to think about the release and all that kind of stuff then, although that is how my mind works. So it's a great question. I'm usually always thinking about that. And I didn't have time that day. And I'm very thankful for it, that I was just able to be in the moment, write the song the way it came out. And then obviously it's taken a life of its own a little bit.
Now, is that the norm going into a write, is having an idea, or is it more kind of playing by ear when you come in? How are those usually set up for you?
For me, when I moved to town, I would do the co-write, sit down in a room, sometimes 2 and 3 times a day, with different people. And so through that process, you kind of learn where your strengths and weaknesses are. For me, because I play so much and I tour a lot, and I had Lynn and someone everybody knows, Dean Dillon, that's written over 70 George Strait songs. Both of them said, get out and play. Go play. If you have an idea, call me. It doesn't matter when it is. We can work through it if it's something that you have to do then. But what I ended up doing, and I would, to be honest with you, probably over the last decade, because I've been, once we put Shine out, I've been playing, and I drive a lot. I drove my bus. I drive, I'm out on the West Coast now. I drove my truck and my trailer out here to play shows. That windshield time is when I compile my ideas. And I learned that, all right, there's a couple things there. I know who I am, which is maybe the biggest part of that, right?
Right.
So musically, I know who I am. Personally, I know who I am. After that, it's about what you want to say. And so as ideas come, I put them right here in my phone. Sometimes I'm not as diligent about that as I should be. And I'm like, oh man, I can remember this. And I do remember some of them, but some of them you lose a little bit. So I've gotten way better at that. But I learned early on that my strength was, in my job, my responsibility in that co-writing room was to bring in a great idea. You're going and sitting with guys that write songs 5 days a week, and they have to have ideas. So they need that. I learned that early on, that's where I was going to fit in. And so then it's just a game for me as to how far I develop that idea before I get in there. Sometimes I pick up a guitar and I go a little bit farther. Sometimes it's an idea that I just had a title or something, from driving down the road, and that's as far as I take it. In order to let whatever's in the room that day take shape. And then that's when you have to be really flexible. Obviously something like Shine or Hey Dad, there's not a ton of flexibility, but many days there is. If you have a title like Moment of Weakness or whatever, you can go in several different directions on that. And so that flexibility and having another mind or 2 other minds in the room is really the thing that makes the co-writing process so good and so special, And I think from my side of this, knowing who I am, and that makes the songwriting process a little bit more specific, which typically brings out a better song. So.
You talked about the co-writes in this last year with Zoom. How has the co-write changed for you, and are you glad to be back to some normalcy lately?
Well, so I wrote a lot about by myself over the last year. And I continued playing. So I kind of threw myself into that and spending time with my family and just living life during this crazy time. I didn't really jump into the Zoom songwriting side of things. I've had several conversations with guys that did, and it's certainly different. I think that what people came to find out is if you already had a relationship with someone, that's really easy. And honestly, it's kind of like what you and I were talking about before. You're sitting at home being able to do your job. That side of this is really where I think that there's going to be a hybrid coming out of this. You know, if you're not feeling it and you don't want to drive into 16th, 17th Avenue to write songs, you just stay in your house, you know, and do it. And so, you know, for me, we're in the process of putting a project together. And so I've just kind of taken the time to compile a lot of the ideas and weed through them. I let them marinate. If an idea marinates long enough with me and it's still there, it's a good idea. And at that point, you know, I'm not going in whether it's Zoom or in person, I'm not going in and running through 30 titles to see what sticks to the wall that day. I'm going in with, let's write about this, you know? So this whole process, I think from a living standpoint, from a family standpoint, I've got 2 little girls and a wife and a dog. I have to include the dog. That I actually like that time at home with them. And so I think that living side of this has gone a long way with me in terms of what I'm doing with the Hometown House Party tour, what I'm doing. I have a thing called the Castle Sessions that I host songwriting nights and stuff over in a castle in North Carolina. It's really helped shape. I've had the time and the space to shape what I'm going to do. And I would tell you that was more, this last year and a half has been more important for me, which I think is in the long run, the most important part of this. Yeah.
But you mentioned the Hometown House Party. How did that whole idea come up? I love reading through that and hearing the stories about that. Where did that idea come from? So in 2019, and, you know, for your listeners and watchers, you know, I've talked about Shine and Ignition a little bit. Those 2 songs and really Shine allowed me to get out and play across the country. That turned into a bus with players and all that stuff for almost a decade. And through that time, I built a lot of relationships with friends, fans, business people, whatever that was. And I have pockets all over the country. And so in 2019, before COVID, I put out a song called Everybody's Got a Hometown. And my marketing around it was that I was going to go and play hometown house parties with just me and a guitar. It started out as the marketing around the song. So it was really just a simple, here's how I'm going to go and promote this thing. And, you know, I was in a position I needed to cut a lot of overhead. And thank goodness, like fast forwarding to COVID, right. I was able to do that because I didn't have, you know, when you look at what some of the bigger artists and stuff, you know, they had payrolls of just insane numbers. I didn't really have that. And so thank goodness, you know. And so it started out like that, played all over the country. I started in Philadelphia, New York, went to LA and everywhere in between, built up a ton of momentum. And I was in that process of like, man, you know, how are we going to grow out of this? Right. And then COVID hit. And I remember it was right after that. I had a friend of mine, I mentioned Budweiser earlier. Mm-hmm. She had worked in marketing with Anheuser-Busch. She doesn't now. She didn't, you know, she was at a different marketing company. But she called, you know, and
and was like, hey, can you come to St. Louis? I've got an idea, and I thought of you. So I go to St. Louis, and I ride around on this Christmas float. They had a bourbon, Ezra Brooks, that's they're from St. Louis, and they attached them to it. They wrapped this Christmas float, and I ride around through neighborhoods and apartment complexes in St. Louis for 4 days. And what I learned was, and I think that we probably all know this, but I saw it. This was right when we were shut down. It was before mask, but it was when, this is the only thing you saw someone's face on outside of your immediate family. I learned the value and the need for human interaction, because I would have people, and this had nothing to do with me. I'm not saying this about me. But I had people come out on their decks, let's say a single woman, in her mid 50s comes out on her deck. She lived in an apartment complex, and she just starts bawling, crying. It was the first time she had seen a human that she didn't know, and right. So to me, it was like, man, this is something, and what it made me want to do was double down on it. And you know what, this is the stubborn, driven side of me, but I was like, I'm going to keep doing what I do. And so I went and had, I'll tell you the real story around it. So I had, my first idea, I had a 9x14 trailer that I used to pull behind the bus, pull equipment, merchandise, all that stuff. Well, this is how my redneck mind works. I said, I'm going to cut the sides out of this thing and so I can be covered and still be mobile and that whole situation. And my father-in-law, he's a contractor and all this stuff, and he's like, yeah, you cannot do that. And so I sent it to this place called Phoenix Conversions in Knoxville, Tennessee. And that's what they do. They convert, RVs or trucks or whatever. And he said the exact same thing. But he had an idea, this porch concessions trailer, which, you've probably seen barbecue places have different things, but he's like, this is what you're describing. I knew what I wanted. Right. And I was like, well, I'm just going to try to adapt my stuff to that. And he's like, can't do that, but I think, you might want to look at this. And so he sent me that thing, and I found, the best deal, which was down around Valdosta, Georgia, a place called AAA Trailers. And they built one for me. And then my father-in-law, not me, my father-in-law helped me, adapt the outside part, which is my stage, with power. And since then I've put lights and have speaker stands and all that kind of stuff. So I can literally roll up and play in a field. I've got a little generator. It only takes one plug if I need power or whatever. And so I kept playing all through COVID. And, I hate this word, but it's COVID safe. It's outdoors. It's easy. And, so I just kept on, I hammered down, I doubled down on it. And now I've got, offers into 2022 to come and do it. And so I've got more demand from a live standing than I ever have with this. And I feel like I connect better doing this. It might not be huge numbers. Some of them are decently big shows, but they're also in a neighborhood,
right.
In a cul-de-sac or at a house. So, you can't really have a ton of people, but the impact per person is so much stronger than it would be like in a club. And I'm not negating from playing in a club. What I mean by that is, if it's just me and you sitting here, we get a long way in a conversation, in a relationship, right? Mm-hmm. Same situation in someone's backyard, and they're in their element. Mm-hmm. So they're comfortable if they come out in, bare feet and shorts, and they've got their bathroom they can use. And so it's completely different, the mentality that they have. And I love it. I'm trying to figure out how to scale it, but I love it.
Now, how much has that kind of helped keep your sanity, being able to still stay out there, staying busy and playing, and being therapeutic also to the folks that don't have any other live entertainment coming their way?
100%. To to continue to play and do what you do for a living, have a feeling like that during COVID, was massive. I think over time we'll all realize how the impact that COVID's had on people that weren't able to go work, that, the depression element, that, the stuff that doesn't really get talked about in the news and stuff. I'm beyond thankful that I was able to go and still play and feel normal. I felt normal this whole time. It's been weird. You have to adapt and you have to abide and, live within the limits kinda. But I felt completely normal because I could go play, and just like you asking the question. And so I've loved this time, and I've grown as a performer. It's just me and a guitar. There's nothing to hide behind, and so I know how to do that even better than I did before, and I feel awesome about it.
The 2021 version of Hey Dad, after playing it as many times as you had, what is it that keeps it still fresh and new for you today?
I think I would combine the story with it. Is when I'm able to set it up correctly and tell my dad's story, which relates to their story, whoever the audience is, and then to see their reaction. You have songs that you get reactions out of, and then you have something like this, and it's just different. It's an entirely different, obviously it's an emotional thing, but it's just different. I feel like I have, in my show of my original stuff, I feel like I have some really good songs in there. None of them have that. And so I think that, that part never gets old. That it just doesn't. And that makes that easy,
And, how surprising is that as a songwriter and an artist to have something that's that special for other people as well?
Well, so from my side of this, you always, growing up or listening to interviews or whatever of artists that you look up to, you always would hear them talk about the power of music or talk about having to play their hits every night and all that kind of stuff. And I always kind of wondered, and I, to be honest with you, I thought that I have, and in a way I do, but I thought that I had that with Shine. I thought Ignition, kind of the same way, that those both had that same reaction. And so to see it happen with something that was so personal that we wrote about that day, the amount of pride that I have about my dad is unparalleled. For me to be able to talk about him, and he was the good thing about this, he was completely deserving of the song. Like the way we sent him off, all of those things, completely deserving. And that side of this, I'm a firm believer now that, authenticity and being authentic is what actually will, anybody can pick up a guitar now and get in front of their phone and put it out wherever.
Right.
And they can actually have, have a viral situation. And so I think for people that, might not have like this crazy ascent to the top or whatever, I think the thing that's so I'm going to back up. When I first moved to Nashville, I randomly was on a golf course with George McCorkle. It's part of the Marshall Tucker Band. Figured out who he was. He was in the foursome in front of me. Started talking to him, told him what I'd moved to town for and that whole situation. And he told me two things. He said, you need to you'll find your group of people that you write with, that you do all that kind of stuff. And at some point, you just need to stay with it. At some point, the light will shine on them. The other thing he told me that I think about all the time, and I may bleep it out for you, but what he said was, he goes, just remember that inevitably the poop will fall.
Right.
And you have to be able to still be there. And so if I look at, I've always kept that in the back of my mind, because I've watched people that open for me that have become like crazy superstars, right? And well deserving. But at the same time, it's like, you never know what changes the trajectory of stuff. And so for me, I've always felt like the authenticity is, especially today, is what will ultimately shine forever, right? The thing that we have today with streaming and videos that will live forever on online is that they will live forever. If someone could discover you 50 years from now and be like, oh man, that's pretty cool, and go and watch that. Well, Hey Dad, for me as a songwriter, is easily the most authentic song that I've ever been a part of. And so it really has given me that box to stand on, or whatever you want to call it, that I feel like me when I talk about it, when I sing it, that's me wrapped up. And that part of this as a songwriter, I didn't know existed. To answer your question, I know I went way around, but I did get back to you.
We just had to go a couple of tracks, a couple of circles around. It's all good. We made it back. Now, I know you got your guitar with you today. Is Hey Dad, is that what you wanted to play for us today? Or
I mean, we've talked about it. Might as well, right?
I know, right?
So I'm out in California right now. I'm in Truckee, California, which is right across from Reno and Lake Tahoe, and just a beautiful, beautiful place. My family was supposed to be out here with me for this leg of the trip, but they softball camp and tournaments kind of got in the way. I've got the girls are 8 and 9, and they're neck deep into it, and my wife has taken over my coaching spot on the team. And so being out here, this song reminds me of them too. Is the reason I was saying that is, my wife and my girls were real small when my dad passed away, but they were madly in love with him, and they called him George. They didn't call him Papa or anything like that, which I absolutely love. And so this is part of the question you asked a minute ago too, but it's all encompassing for me. It's the family aspect of this and the hometown house party side of this. I absolutely love the fact that kids are there and that families are there. It makes those things so much better. And that's coming from the guy who wrote the song about moonshine, that's not part of that. If there's an evolution of Matt Stillwell or whatever, I still sing that song. I still drink moonshine. I'm not saying that, but the family aspect of the hometown house party, coupled with COVID, coupled with Hey Dad, and because a lot of these hometown house parties, the reason the people know me or have me come play is because of Hey Dad. And so when you get in that situation in a backyard, whether it's with 50 people or 250 people, there are some absolutely crazy feelings and stories and moments that happen in those shows. And that is as much of what I was talking about earlier with, the impact of these shows as opposed to anything else. And this song certainly has it. And so, how we doing on time? Do you want me to be okay for a second?
I'm good the rest of the day.
Well, if it's okay, I'm gonna walk you through how I would tell the story.
That'd be great.
Cool. All right. So and it's not that I have a script or anything, but there certainly are talking points that I use. And so, like I told you before, I wrote this song 29 days after Dad passed, and I wrote it as a tribute to my dad. Had a great relationship with him, and it's simply about a conversation that I would have if I could. And there's a couple of things that I like to talk about. I learned way more than 2 things from my dad, but the two that I love to talk about in regards to this, I learned how to love my family because I watched my dad love his family. And the second part of that is I learned how to work because I watched my dad work, and he showed me how to work. He didn't tell me how to work. And there's a huge difference in those two things. And especially today, you know, there's a huge conversation about finding people that are willing to go work. Like, you know, it almost, that old adage of, you know, they broke the mold
Right.
with someone. There's so many hardworking dads and granddads and people in general, but it's really tough to find people that really work like crazy. My dad was a type 1 diabetic from the time he was 15. And, but every day of my life, I watched him get up and go to work before the sun came up and come home after the sun came down. And when he would get home at night, so I played baseball through college, but I played everything before that. And so I was always outside shooting basketball or kicking a football around or throwing a baseball against our chimney and catching ground balls or something. And most of the time he would stay outside with me before he would ever go inside. And now he would tell you, and this speaks to the song, he would tell you it's probably because he just didn't want to go in and see my mom. But I realized that he did that, but let me tell you, this was a very powerful moment for me. And I don't know that I've even told my brother this. I have twin brothers. And when my dad passed and we were getting ready for the service, my brother Luke wrote for the preachers. We had 4 preachers, all different denominations. My dad was a well-liked man. So I always thought that was really, really cool. Luke wrote a 4-page, just his memories, right? One of his first ones was that he watched my dad do that with me. He watched my dad stay outside and shoot basketball. My dad wasn't an athlete. He wasn't any of that stuff, but man, did he do that. And so, you know, when I get home, you know, and I'm going for 4.5 weeks from the girls right now, which is crazy to me. But, you know, when I get home, I still have to be dad. I still have to, you know, play softball with them or whatever. And I don't have to look very far for inspiration on that. And so to me, that's where this song lays. That's the tribute. That's the, you know, the common thread that I see when I tell the story and that people relate to it. So hope you like it. This is called Hey Dad. His old hands were like leather, working in the cold Carolina weather, stringing 60-hour weeks together for mama and brothers. He was old-fashioned, he was old school, American red, white, and blue. But to me, he was just cool, the man I wanted to be. Well, it ain't set in that he's really gone. If I could call the number still here in my phone, I'd say, hey Dad, it's me, Dad. I just wanted to tell you that I miss you back. He'd make me laugh like he always did. Before he say goodbye, he'd leave me with this: go on, boy, be strong, boy. Don't you shed a tear for me, boy. I had a good life, one hell of a run. It's all right, love you, son. And hey, Dad, I tell him that his 2 grandbabies are turning into little ladies. And just like him, they're a little crazy. Talk about him all the time. I'd let him know that me and my brothers are spending more time with one another. Mama says some days are better than others. I think she's gonna be fine. Hey Dad, it's me, Dad. I just wanted to tell you that I miss you back. He'd make me laugh like he always did. Before he say goodbye, he'd leave me with this. Go on, boy, be strong, boy. Don't you shed a tear for me, boy. I had a good life, one hell of a run. It's all right, I love you, son. Hey, Dad. Go on, boy, be strong, boy. Don't you shed a tear for me, boy. I had a good life, one hell of a run. It's all right, I love you, son. Hey, Dad. Hey, Dad.
That's good. I was keeping my mic muted so that my screen didn't take over while you were in the middle of playing, and I was singing along over here too with my mic muted.
I saw you. That's awesome.
I told you I knew that song.
Yeah, you do, man. I love it.
Now, what did last year do? And this is something I like to ask artists and folks that are out and about, especially. How did what happened last year? And I know you stayed busy through it. How did that maybe change your goal setting or your mindset this year and moving forward?
I think that it showed me that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and that I somewhat feel comfortable in that. So I'm also to a point. I mentioned I do these castle sessions. So I did one the other day with Heidi Newfield from Trick Pony and Matt King, who's back in the late 90s, he was an artist on like Arista and Atlantic and Asylum, when all those labels were eating themselves. He very, at the time, very traditional country. But he's kind of morphed into this like crazy tatted up hillbilly bluegrass rock situation that's very popular in New York, LA, and Texas. Well, Ray Wiley Hubbard is a mentor of his, good friend of his, and Ray Wiley told him, and this stuck with me. This is just a few weeks ago, but I think it's great for what you just asked. He said, you need to be right-sized. You need to be, meaning that, whatever you're doing, if that feels right, you need to do that and maximize it within that. If it grows beyond that, most of those things are not stuff that you and I can control. Right.
Right.
I've always felt like that I can, man, I'm going to go make this happen. I'm going to, whatever that is from a goal setting standpoint. I've always wanted to be as successful as I can be. There's my goal. Right. Specifically, yeah, I would love to be Garth Brooks. Nobody who wouldn't want to be Garth Brooks. But I also, over this last year, I've realized the therapeutic side of what I do, my personality, my people skills, my networking side of me, those are strengths of mine. The hometown house party concept, is not new by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of people do it. A lot of people are doing it now.
Right.
Most people didn't really go out and have a trailer built. And most people don't necessarily do it all across the country. So I still have the idea in my head of that I'm setting myself apart by doing that. So how do you find your angle? Okay, well, I'm also a very big believer that as we open up, quote unquote, in all these huge stores, well, guess what? There's 50 superstars that haven't played in 2 years that not just want to go play, they have to go play.
Right.
Meanwhile, a lot of our venues have shrunk in capacity or they've closed, right? So you're going to have this crazy bottleneck of, so if you're in the middle of that, especially if you're just starting out, you really have to figure out how to pick your path and go. I have, over this last year and a half, it has solidified in me that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and that it will grow the way it's supposed to grow within that. Yes, I do think that my trailer setup would be great in the parking lots for Chesney's stadium tour. He does that, and I've played a few of those. I'm being serious about all that.
Yeah.
Same thing with Luke Bryan's stuff. They both have that same kind of relationship with their fans that, it's an experience when you go to that show. It's an all-day deal. And I think from a scaling standpoint that I need to come play a hometown house party for you.
That's what I was thinking.
And so I want to include radio. I want to, as hard as it is and has been on artists, it's equally, if not more hard on radio stations. Advertising, all of this stuff. When 90% of your talking points are promoting live concerts and you don't have any for a year and a half,
right?
It's a different ballgame. And so what I would like, what we're working on doing is taking that to Cameron and saying, hey, take this thing and go to one of your spots, go to the Ford dealership, whatever. I drive a Ford truck, so it makes sense. But hey, take it to them, go sell a show, and I'll come in and do it and build markets like that. I think that's my scaling of it, and then do cool events, like what I was saying, potentially doing that, I'll pitch it to him. Don't worry about Chesney or whatever, cause he just, the reason I said that he announced yesterday, I guess, about his stadium tour. So, but figuring out how to grow it, I'm still in that mindset of, I'm assuming this, I run my label. Mm-hmm. I manage myself and I book myself. Yep. So my mind is equally, if not more so, on the business side as it is on the creative side. Mm-hmm. And so I'm constantly trying to figure that out. But I know that getting 50 people to buy into what I'm doing in their backyard is way better right now, way better than 1,000 people at a club that are there to get drunk.
Right.
And I have nothing wrong with people getting drunk. It has nothing to do. In fact, I'll really help you do that. Lots of songs about that. But my point is that, being right sized, I feel like I'm doing right now and I've built a platform now, low overhead, but now I can scale that. If I need to bring and do a full band show or something like that, I can do that when it makes sense. That being said, man, I don't even carry a merchandise guy. The way that I'm able to do some of this stuff is I know people. Like I'm at a community called Schaefer's Mill right now. I know the developer, and I'm able to come up here and stay while I'm 2,000 miles from home. Same thing in Bakersfield, same thing in LA. And I just have people. You can't take other people with you to do that. So I wouldn't be able to go and do what I'm doing with 3-4 other, much less one other person. I have to have that flexibility, and that flexibility, I'm moving my own pace. Not to get too far in the business side of this, but I move at my own pace. I have low overhead, and I have a product that I feel great about right now. And so the last year and a half has shown me that that's exactly what I need to do, and so I'm kind of figuring, I'm always kind of figuring out how to grow. I think the biggest part for me is that, I've had sporadic radio promotion. I've had sporadic, I never had that, this consistent year after year push of consistent singles and that whole situation. I've just kind of done it as I can do it. Mm-hmm. And my goal now that I have all of these other things going, all moving in the same direction, is to let the music lead and get it in front of me. Right now other things kind of lead a little bit, but with, I just decided that as that rock I want to stand on, let's let that get out in front of me and then regularly release stuff and build markets. I think we're back into an era where, obviously you have conglomerates and a lot of decisions are made by 3 or 4 people, but that doesn't mean that you can't just, go to Longview, Washington or Des Moines out and build that market. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so how do you do that? in my opinion, it's just as valuable. Obviously, playing the song is golden, but if you're promoting a Matt Stillwell show in your market, that validates me. That's what I want to do everywhere.
Right.
Right now, mostly that's with fans, which is awesome. That's the number one thing. But I want to grow over the next few years into that side to where I can go in whatever market across the country and have people that have come see me and me do that on my terms. That's the kind of the position that I'm getting into, is that I'm doing exactly what I want to do it, when I want to do it, and how I want to do it. And I'm flexible enough to mold into whatever I need to if I have to, from a promotion standpoint. So not to get too deep in the woods, I apologize for that. That's kind of a unique thing about me, is that I do run my label and manage myself and book myself. So those conversations, I'm the person that has those,
That's cool. So, now, Matt, if folks want to find more information, obviously the single re-released, upcoming dates, music, where's the best place to keep up with all that stuff?
The best overall place is my website, which is mattstillwellmusic.net, and you can find everything you want on there. Obviously, Facebook at Matt Stillwell Music, Instagram, same thing, Spotify, Apple, Pandora, all that stuff. I'm easy to find. I'm also very easy to go and binge listen to. And I hope when people hear, "Hey Dad," and maybe that's the first time they've heard of Matt Stillwell, that they can go back and dive into the Shine album, to the Right on Time album, or even farther back than that. I would suggest staying with Shine, but a lot of people I have a few before that too. So, but I hope that they do that. And so I'm very easy to find on that end, but the website's the main way.
That's the main hub. I understand. That's whenever I'm saying the podcast, go to the website. It'll direct you to where else you need to go. All right.
Absolutely.
Well, Matt, I, like I said, been a fan ever since Hey Dad was released on MPE a few years ago. I appreciate you taking some time playing the song, and brother, hopefully we can talk again real soon.
Absolutely. I would love to. Hometown house party.
All right, before we wrap things up, I had one story we just had to share with you today. You know how they say that someone has a name that's destined for greatness? Well, it probably works the other way too, right? Well, last Friday, a 34-year-old woman in Florida was arrested for DUI after crashing a car into a Taco Bell sign. She also hit the Taco Bell's water meter and a tree. And get this, her name is Kanisha Booze. Yes, her last name is Booze. And that's what she was up to last Friday night. Now, Kanisha works at the Taco Bell where it happened. It was around 10:20 p.m. and it's unclear if she was leaving work, arriving at work, or if she was off and it was just a coincidence. Now, she also left the scene and sped through some red lights, but the cops caught up with her and threw her in jail. She was released Saturday morning after posting $1,750 bond. Well, thanks again for joining us for this 98th episode in Season 2 of Good Questions with Cameron Dole. If you ever have a comment, question, anything else you'd like to know, you can hit me up on the contact page at gqwithcam.com. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, also TikTok at gqwithcam. If you'd like to help out in the funding for this podcast, visit our merch store where we've got hoodies, shirts, mugs, tumblers, stickers, and more. That's gqwithcam.com/shop. If you have a special guest idea, email me gqwithcam@gmail.com. Well, thanks again to our good friend Brandon Allen for coming up with our theme music. We're going to let him play us out. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Tuesday.